Why are we having this occasion? We are having this occasion because it's a pre-Katiba Day event. So kuna wakati ambapo kama pengine kuna birthday ndani ya mtoto, ni ya mke, ni ya bwana, ni ya ndugu, ni ya shangazi, si mpaka kunakuwa na mipangilio? Ni mpaka kuwa na mipangilio. Nyakati mnapanga masuala hayo, unaita kina nani? You call relatives, you call friends, you call your network. Na kwa madhumuni hayo ndio tumeamua kwamba we call people we work with. And we have also linked up with our friends who are in Nairobi. They are called Linda Katiba Movement. So this particular constitution, the last time the government printed copies for wananchi, it was when we were going to the referendum in 2010. The last time the government printed this to distribute to wananchi. The subsequent copies that have been printed is from the civil society and the donor community. Can somebody tell me why the government refused to spread this thing across? Any guess?
So that the citizen will not understand the constitution and put them in account.
Exactly. So the ignorant you are, the better for the government. How many of you have bothered to read this constitution? So a very good number. That's encouraging. How many of you have bothered in your own spaces and networks, spread the word, what this constitution is all about?
I have.
Raise your hand. Yeah. So that's, you have taken the pain of a parent to make sure that you feed your kid, make sure that the kid is well clothed, napata dawa mzuri. Sasa huu mtoto anakuwa miaka 11 on Friday. And we know the process of getting a kid is also an effort, sio? It's an effort. Utakaa tu hivi na ule amekaa huko afu mnapata mtoto? Kuna effort. Kupata mtoto? Lakini sasa within that effort, there's also labor pains when we are giving birth to the kids, ndio? So tunasema uchungu wa mwana ujuaye ni mzazi. Ni mama. Why are you monopolizing the pain? So that's why kuna wazazi ambao hawataki tuchezee mtoto wao. Unaelewa? Ukitaka kuchezea mtoto wangu ni mpaka unihusishe. Because public participation is mentioned in the Constitution 17 times. It was not by accident, it was deliberate. Unaelewana? Yeah, it was deliberate. So, this kid is now 11 years. So we must make sure that we guard against anybody playing with the kid. There have been attempts to play with the kid, but all the processes have failed. Because it's apparent some of the people playing with this kid are not part of the matrix we are calling the parent. So ni muhimu sana tuangalie masuala haya. Now one, this constitution from Article 1 to the last article, it was arranged in terms of hierarchy. What is important comes first. Nelon, what is important comes first. First is a preamble where we are committing ourselves that we have given it unto ourselves this particular constitution. So ni kama kiapo tunaapa. Then Article 1 inapea nyinyi power raia. Haipei mtu yote. Una vile muka hapa. That Article 1 is talking to you. Is reminding you the power you have. Mwananchi wa Kenya, leo hii ukizaliwa na kwamba tujue kwamba wewe tumeconfirm you are a human being who is a Kenyan, ni kwamba power yote katika Kenya hii iko kwa mikono yako. The older constitution was saying sovereign power iko kwa state, kwa serikali. Tunajua ni kina nani walikuwa kwa serikali. So that power was not emanating from us. It was residing where power is. So in short, what we are saying is this. Wewe ukikuwa na hiyo power ambayo katiba imekupea katika Article 1, you donate that power when you are electing some people. You are donating. When you donate power, you just donate a percentage of that power, not the absolute power. That's why the person donated that power by you cannot do something substantial without consulting you. Kwa mfano, leo hii ukiwa na uwezo unataka kuajiri mtu shamba kwa. Unaelewa? Wewe unampea power yote kwa sababu umemwandika kazi. Si inatakuwa kama kuna kitu nitakuwa anafanya consultation. Mara kwa mara unamwambia kufikisha wapi ile kazi. Na analeta ripoti. That's what we do when we elect people. But we have forgotten as a people that we have that power to check on them. We have forgotten that when we elect them, they are not also genius. We need to occasionally make sure that wanaajibika. Unaelewa lakini? We make sure kwamba wanaajibika. We elect a member of parliament after tunamuita Songo. Ule bazu. We are losing it. Tuambie ule mfanyikazi wetu. Inatakuwa na atutumie, itakuwa na use the names like mtumishi. Hapo itakuwa na atutumikie. So let us remind ourselves that the constitution ndio nilikwambia imeandikwa kulingana na hierarchy. Inakueleza why power is, then that power is now we start donating that power. Nyakati tunaandika watu, tunaandika rais kazi, employee number 1. Unaelewa? Alafu tunaandika sasa wao maemployee wengine mpaka employee mwenye tunaita MCA. Tumewapea kazi. That's why unaona pale wanasema hiyo power tutai exercise at the national na county, sababu kuna watu ambao tumeandika kazi county hapa, kuna watu ambao tumeandika kazi national. Na ukiangalia every chapter and every institution wanasema the power they derive is from the people. So hayo ndio nitakuwa na tutafakari wakati tunasema kwamba we elect idiots and we start complaining. We complain for 4 years, the 5th year wanakuja na pesa tena wanatuchanganya tena, we elect the same idiots. Now who is the idiot here? We elect the leaders ama ni sisi? Yeah. Ile Kinkaka anaita anasema wajinga sisi, mnakasirika. But the politicians right now, as we are speaking today, they are reinventing themselves through coalitions, through political parties. They are consolidating their interests bila watakuja kuwachanganya. But sisi tunachia. When will we sit down and say, these are the issues that we need to consolidate so that we don't vote against somebody. We don't vote for somebody. We vote issues zenye zitatusaidia. Because tukiangalia kwamba our politics is personalized, at the end of the day, we don't elect issues. So what parameters are you going to measure my success if the success was not based on any parameters? Sahi tuko na TM hapa, because let us now talk political education. Because we have talked civic education without mentioning names. And there we go wrong. Me, I'm not against anybody. But let me ask you, give me one contractor in Nakuru Town East mwenye amejenga mradi ya CDF. Any? By name? What normally happens? But those are issues we are speaking about. When we are talking about sovereign power, what are we doing with the power? CDF gets around 100 million and above every financial year. Who should oversight a member of parliament if the member of parliament is part of the implementation? We are watering down the constitution by having such arrangements. So we should not keep quiet. When Center for Enhancing Democracy and other groups went to court saying that now with devolution, this arrangement where the CDF is managed by a member of parliament is illegal, members of parliament rushed to parliament and now changed the name, saying national government CDF. So ni kama kupaka umbwa rangi, unasema hii ni umbwa mwitu. So some of these things, when we are talking about the full implementation of the Constitution, we have to live to the spirit of what was intended. Because with the devolution architecture, there is no space a member of parliament managing CDF. We can have another arrangement. Still funds will come. So I'm just giving you practical things that we need to look into. When we give the IG all the powers, we give him National Police Service Commission, then he's still getting instruction from the executive. What bullshit are we doing? Whereby the police are still getting instruction from the executive. We go back to the sovereign power. So the wananchi, we need to wake up and start, because this article was canvassed in Bomas for 3 months. This article in Bomas for 3 months. before people decided that we need to write it this way. So the intention of the framers of the Constitution did not expect to give people who are stupid power. There's a lady called Nyanjiro. Ana ashasikia Nyanjiro. Chiko amesikia wapo, yani mwanaharakati. Nyanjiro pia alipigana sana. And let me be honest with you, the Mau Mau walisaidiwa sana na kina mama kwa sababu walikuwa wanafichwa na pia ndio walikuwa wanapelekea supplies ya chakula wakuwa kwa forest. They fought very, very hard. Have you ever asked yourself why the Kikuyu woman is very much independent? Just sometimes you should learn anthropology. Why have you heard, out of all the other communities in Kenya, why is a Kikuyu woman quite resilient and independent? It's because wanaume wao walinyang'anywa, wanaume wao walikuwa forest, wakajikaisha miaka mingi sana. Wakajikaisha. Wakalea watoto. Some of the men who went to the forest never came back. Either they died there or something happened. But those women remained resilient na wakalea watoto, and some of those kids, at the independence, took over government positions. Wanako wako forest, mahali ulikuwa unakaa ngati, unaitwa home guards. Wanakuja wananyakua shamba yako, wanakufukuza. Wewe unakuwa squatter because your husband, you are ostracized because your husband nini? Mau Mau. So these are things that we have to appreciate. The women's struggle in our independence is poorly documented because it's the men who wrote history. So those were struggles of independence. We got independence because Kenyatta was never Mau Mau. Talked ill of the Mau Mau. Akitumwa na Mau Mau kwenda London to fight for their land, alifanya nini? Si alienda kuoa. Akakaa na mzungu. Akazaa kinapita Magana. Unaelewana? Yeah. So the colonial government made an arrangement with Kenyatta. Wakamtoa mahali alikuwa Lodwar, wakamleta Maralal, wakaongea kwamba independence tutawapea, lakini make sure that you protect the British settlers who are around here. When Kenyatta came out of jail and we got independence, the first stop for Kenyatta was the town hall. Hall ya town hapa. Yeah, hapo ndio alikutana na wabeberu to assure them that he will protect them. What did he do to the Mau Mau? Aliwaambia hakuna shamba na hakuna cha bure. Watu wametoka forest wanadhani watapewa shamba yao. Leo nawaambia kwamba mtanunua shamba yenu. For you to get your land back, you have to buy the land. So that's the pain of the struggle, the independence. People like Jaramogi, ambayo wabeberu walikuwa wameenda wamwambia, we feel safer with you, let's get power, let us get independence. Akamwambia we cannot get independence when Kenyatta is just here in Lodwar. There is no independence without Kenyatta. Kina Tom Mboya, kina Julius Kiano walikuwa wamesema wewe Jaramogi unatuwestea time. Kina Gishuru. He was even chased out of Legislative Council, which was then the parliament. The people who were in the Legico as senators in Nakuru here was a Luo, Songa Sijeo. There was no tribalism. The member of parliament, the first member of parliament for Nakuru Town West, Nakuru Town West, by the way, was Njoro, Molo, and the two Kurezois. That was Nakuru Town West. That was Nakuru West. It was a Luya called Onamu, a Maragoli from Western. There was no tribalism. First member of parliament for Nakuru Town was who? Ochieng Oneko, a Luo. There was no tribalism. Why did we embrace tribalism? It's because after independence, people started seeing that when one of your own is in power, you get a lot of favors than the rest of the country. So people see the dividends of being a tribal king. We got our independence after several Lancaster meetings, but the Lancaster meeting was a constitution ambayo tulipewa na mbeberu. We had very little to contribute as a people. We had only delegates who we sent there. Kadu and Kanu delegates. Rift Valley was Kadu. They were embracing Majimboism. That was their way of talking about devolution. We got an independence that was a multi-party constitution. Na majimbo. Tulikuwa na Senate. But Tom Mboya, after a lot of arguments in Lancaster, told Jomo Kenyatta, tukishinda hapa tuna argue about devolution, about nini, we shall delay our independence. What you do is, just accept what the British has given, because the Majimbo model was favoring the British settlers. And the British settlers were supporting Kadu because of the Majimbo concept. People really feared two communities by then, particularly the British, the dominance in the political arena of the Kikuyus and the Luos. So what happened is, Tom Mboya akasema, told Kenyatta, hii katiba hii ufanye hivi. Tukirudi Kenya, si wewe ndio utakuwa rais. Si wewe ndio utakuwa president. Kenyatta akasema yes. Wewe tukirudi Kenya, kwanza wewe nipe Ministry of Constitutional Affairs. Hii katiba tutaishughulikia. So when they came, they started dismantling the constitution. The first thing that died was the devolution, then which was called Majimbo, and the Senate was abolished. Then every power was returned back to the center under Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. So we started dismantling our independent constitution quite early. So when people like Jaramogi, who are socialists, saw what was happening, they were not happy. First, Jaramogi and Bildad Kagia said that the issue about land distribution was not fair. Why should people buy land that they were dispossessed in the first place? But Kenyatta saw it fit that the British should give him money, so he buys back land from the British who don't feel safe staying in Kenya. And Kenyatta said, the Mau pia nyinyi hamtapewa shamba, mtanunua. Part of the money that the British gave is the money that Jomo Kenyatta gave Dickson Kihika Kimani, the father of our senator here, to start a land buying company. Gold Ngwataniro Mutukanyo land buying company. Sindio bwana? Yeah. Ngwataniro Mutukanyo land buying company. So that you buy shares, then you are given land. And that's why the most of the Mau descendants settled, some of them in Rift Valley. Because they had no any alternative. And that's why Kihika Kimani became a member of parliament in Laikipia, in Bahati, then Nakuru North, in Molo, Because these are people he brought from Central and settled in the land. Wanamjua. So the land distribution was not right. Peter Kagia talked about it. Jaramogi talked about it. So when you as a Kalenjin, you are fighting a Mau Mau descendants who came here by default, we are fighting somebody who brought you independence, a descendant. I remember when we went to bury Mwangi Moraya's father in a place called Ndefo. Do you know what Ndefo means? Anybody may know what Ndefo inamaanisha nini? Sikuna mahali hapo inaitwa Ndefo Njoro? Inamaanisha nini? Good. Nakuru District Ex-Freedom Fighters Organization. Those who are Mau Maus who can settle there. Wakajiita hivyo. Those guys have never had peace. They fight always. Kama shamba yao haingechukuliwa na Homguards, at independence, the Kenyatta family had only 2.5 acres of land. Now they own land equivalent to Nyanza province. Then unasema kwamba ati tukae hivyo hivyo. So what magic was that? If people grow land, I would like to know that chemistry or science. If you go to Taita Taveta, there are only 2 titles. One is for Kenyatta family, the other one near criticals. The Taitas are squatters. If you go to Lamu, Kenyatta went there, wambia kwa nini hamulimi? Waswahili wakasema maana tulete tinga itulimie. Kenyatta came to Kiambu here, akawapelekea tinga ya kutosha. So half of Lamu are Kikuyus. That's why they are able to get members of parliament. So when somebody is a squatter there, anafeel aje? So land is a big factor in Rift Valley. Today, our team is in Naivasha, talking about land issues about the Maasais and the other communities in Maela. Today, the county commissioner is there, the governor is there. So hii bonde la ufa tumeifanya bonde la kufa. Kwa sababu masuala mashamba, because it's historic. Nobody should be called a squatter in his country, an independent country. Kwani huyo mtu hakuwa na mahali anakaa? So Jaramogi alikuwa na kijana mmoja Muhindi kutoka Goa ambaye alikuwa chief advisor yake. So to slow down Jaramogi, Pio Gama Pinto had to die because of those differences. So in 1965, the first political assassination happened. Pio Gama Pinto was killed just to pass a message to Jaramogi, tunakucheki. By 1966, ikasemekana kwamba sasa hiyo tension between the president and the vice president is too much, so something need to happen. They went to Limuru here, changed their party constitution and said, now we want vice presidents kwa kila province. They are diluting the power in terms of the party. So unajua kuna kuaga na sasa hii ingawaje Jubilee sijui kama imebaki ni insurance bado ni party. Kwa parties kuna party leader na kuna deputy party leader. So kwa chama ya KANU by then kulikuwa na chairman na vice chair. Na vice chair was Jaramogi. When you give now this vice chair to everybody, you are diluting the power of the substantive vice president. And that's when now Jaramogi said enough is enough. Shegana and Shegana. I have now to leave. Then he went and wrote a book in 1967, not yet Uhuru. And he really elaborated what were the issues. Jaramogi amewekwa kando, tumeleta Murumbi because he is half Goan, half Masai. Yeah, hana a lot of affiliation na hizi big tribes. Murumbi alikaa hapo miezi kadhaa, akacheki environment, akasema hapa siwezi survive. Akasema I'm tendering my resignation on account of my health. Akawacha. So that was now the period also at the height of now the settlement of the Kikuyus in Rift Valley, and they needed somebody who will become a vice president but also protect the Kikuyus in Rift Valley. Then we found Moi, MO1, my own interest. So MO1 came, akakuwa vice president. Wandani wa Kenyatta wanasema this is just a passing cloud. Watu tutajipanga vizuri. Moi came. Then by that time, the star of Tom Mboya is really rising. And people are worried because people like Njoroge Mungai, the physician for the president, feels that this president's health si nzuri sana. Because alikuwa amekuwa attacked kidogo na stroke hapa na pale, na walikuwa wanafichana. And they feel if this guy passes on, the guy who will take power because of his also international connection is who? Tom Mboya. So ni mpaka ashughulikiwe. So Tom Mboya was eliminated. We continued with that arrangement and find ourselves, there was an attempted coup in 1971 that did not succeed. People like Kitili Mwendo were put inside because mkubwa wa jeshi alikuwa anatoka Ukambani. We continued like that. In 1975, we decided that now, as a country, huyu mtu anaitwa JM Kariuki ni kimbelembele sana. Na tungependa mtu kama huyu succeed the president. Na pia anaandamana the president kwa akienda Harambee, president akitoa 10,000 anatoa 20,000. And embarrass the president. He's talking about a country with how many millionaires and how many beggars? 10 millionaires and 10 million beggars. Yeah. So 1965 siye pia akashughulikiwa. 1975 akashughulikiwa. So we have a history as a country. Baada ya JM kushughulikiwa, so wametoa threat among themselves. It was Martin Shikuku went to parliament that but he used a very bad analogy. Yeah? But let me say it, what he said in parliament in 1975. The hyenas have killed one of their own. That's what Martin Shikuku said in parliament. He was thrown in by Kenyatta, katupwa ndani. He said also in that very day, Kanu is dead. The speaker then, Mr. Seronoi, akasema, there's nothing to substantiate. It's true. Seronoi wakashikwa ndani ya bunge. Wakawekwa ndani. And a host of other people. Tumeshughulikia JM. 1976 tumeanzisha movement, change the constitution movement. Hickson Kihika Kimani na Njenga Karume, we were calling them the Kiambu Mafia. Wameanzisha movement ya kubadilisha katiba iwe kwamba it should not be automatic that in the event the president dies in office, the vice president will take over. Whom are they targeting? Moi. Wakazunguka a lot of rallies in this country. They are targeting Moi because zile mathreat zingine internally wamesha mariza. Tomboya ameenda, JM ameenda. It was the Attorney General who saved Moi. Sir Charles Mogane Njonjo is the one who saved Moi. He went to Parliament as the Attorney General and said this: it's reasonable to imagine the death of a president. Which was something ambayo technically is just something that we have legal scholars here. We have the right to of conscience and everything, sio? So akasema kwamba yoyote ambaye atakuwa anaongea kuhusu succession of president will be imagining the death of the president. That amounts to treason. Na wakati huo treason ni death sentence. So that's how that debate was killed. Njonjo did not say that because he loved Moi. Njonjo felt that Moi is also a passing cloud ambaye atakuwa pale na yeye ajipange atoe Moi. So it was not the love of Moi. 1980 Jaramogi na Nyona wakasema wanataka kuform a political party, because remember by that time the constitution still talks about Kenya being a multi-party democracy. So 1980 kina Nyona na Jaramogi wanasema wanataka kuanzisha party. Vile ilisikikana tu wanataka kuanzisha party, walitupwa ndani. Wakasema sasa hatuwezi wacha hiyo clause bado kwa katiba. In 1981 wakaenda sasa parliament hasa kubadilisha katiba iseme ni maana Kenya is one party state. And the person who pushed that agenda was Mwai Kibaki. Kwa sasa yeye alikuwa nini? Vice President. Because Kenyatta has died in 1978. Na yeye walibadilisha. People like Koigi, who will be joining us on Friday here, will tell you that's the period they started suffering. Because kumbuka alishikwa hiyo 1975, lakini akatoka 1978 after the death of Kenyatta. Sasa Masaidi. Sasa chama ni moja. That's why there was an appetite for the coup, because people don't have where to ventilate. So the following year, there was a coup in August, because people don't have a space to ventilate. So the problem is, Njonjo and his team had planned for a coup on the 2nd August. This other coup ya kina Ochuka was to preempt ya Njonjo. And we know everything that happened. Now, after the coup, Moi now became an official dictator. Because now he was told, don't trust anybody. Now he's opened torture chambers. Some of the judges and independent institutions, they were stripped of what we call security of tenure. So he decided the elections was to be done in 1984, according to the schedule, because the other previous election was done in 1979. So he decided to have a snap election in 1983. The reason, he wanted to purge anybody he does not trust. So a lot of people went. A lot of people were purged out in 1983. Kina Western here will tell you that's the period most of them were guests of the state. It was very, very serious period. People like Karanja, remember Karanja and Jan, wale jamani disappeared. Yeah, tukatafuta kwa makaburi zote tukuwaipata mwili. That was the period. Mwakenya nini, all the academia guys ukiongea kidogo umetupwa ndani. People like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, people like Anyang' Nyong'o were lecturers had to run away. Anyang' Nyong'o went to Mexico. People like Lupita born in Mexico. She's Mexican by the way. Mukarunganga went. Our friend like Kimiruki Karaoke and Koigi walikuwa wanashinda kama wameshikwa hapa na pale. Lot of atrocities. Then, by the time we are coming to 1988, Moi feels that he wants to change the electoral system, how to elect leaders. Then we came up with the Mololongo system of election, where the longest queue became the shortest, and the shortest became the longest. Na ni vitu unaona na macho, si ati ni digital. Unaona tu hii na macho, hawa ni watu tano. Lakini watu tano ndio watakuwa ni washindi. And remember those days, we had an electoral body. The returning officer was the DC, appointed by the president. Do you know where we come from? The electoral body. The returning officer is the DC. So if Moi does not want you, anaambia tu DC sitaki Calvin. Na hiyo imeisha namna hiyo. Wewe ukue na queue mrefu aje, hiyo imeisha. And some of those Mololongo systems was also planned to deal with some people. Because Mike Kibaki was the vice president, was being accused of not being loyal because he never put the KANU logo here, ile njogo kwa koti yake, he never. Na hakuwa anatembelea mahali ingine, watu walikuwa wanamuita kwamba the vice president of Othaya. So, having been in the system long enough, he was tipped off by the intelligence and told, we know your position, you normally don't attend this party primaries. But please go there because umepangiwa kwamba mambo yako itakarabatiwa. So he had to drive up to there and sat down with the DC na akambia DC, even rigging needs some intelligence. And he called his people. Hivyo ndiye aliponea. What did Moi do nyakati alipenya? He was demoted from a vice president to the minister of health. Hakufukuzaya kuambia nenda. Alikuwa anataka kuona akasirika aishie kama kina Katiba na Rubia. Lakini yeye akasema mimi nashikilia kama nimepewa minister of health, I'll do wonders here. Then Saitoti was appointed. I'm telling you this history and on the background that why we insulated the position of a deputy president in the constitution. So hata Kenyatta akasirike gani na Ruto, hakuna kitu akamfanyia. Tunaelewana? We did that because of this history I'm talking about. Because the vice president ilikuwa ni kama tu yani handkerchief kwa rais. Unatoa nayo uchafu unatupa. Ukihitaji utaenda kuiosha baadaye. By the time we are reaching remember that the period that Njoya talked about the new constitution, alipata shida sana. Even he was disowned by PCA Church. It's the church that could speak and sleep peacefully. Huko ukiongea Nyayo Torture Chambers unashughulikiwa. You are beaten mpaka unasema kwamba hiyo kitu nilifanya hata kama hukufanya. Ndio uachiliwe. People like Koigi na kina Western hapa kuletwa kotini ilikuwa ni nuclear science. Uwezi letwa mchana wakati watu wako pale. Kwa hiyo walikuwa mnaletwa saa ngapi? Jioni. Very early in the morning, saa 12 ama uletwe saa 11:30 ya jioni. Na ni kesi ya haraka na unawekwa ndani. Ukienda kuangalia unasema Western alisaini hii kitu kweli, alifanya hivi, na hata siku hiyo hakuwa hapo. So the churches, Henry Okulu, Timothy Njoya, Ndingi Mwana Nzeki here. I remember when Ndingi Mwana Nzeki humiliated the president hapa plus the king. Ati amekuja anataka kukaa mbele, anaambia umekuja late, kaa nyuma kama wenzako. Na hautaongea hii church, ukitaka kuongea huko nje. Na bunduki zisingie wa kanisa, unakuja kulinda nani hapa? Hapa tunalindwa na Mungu. Mabodyguard wako kama wana bunduki wakae huko nje. That was Ndingi Mwana Nzeki. Hapa na siku hizi makanisa hizo sadaka. At the delegations sijui wapi. See, we don't have churches nowadays. It's cartels. Prosperity gospel. These are issues these are people who gave us hope. By the time we reached 1990, in Nairobi, the only place you could give a press conference was a place called Chester House. That's where you feel safe. So, Chester House. And that's why the international media will come and report you, because KBC will not report you. So for us to hear what happened in Nairobi, tutafungua Radio Germany, Deutsche Welle Germany, tutafungua BBC, Voice of America, tujue what happened in Nairobi. I'm just saying this in the context of a free media we are having. So let's not abuse that freedom, also kuitumia vibaya. Kwamba tunapendelewa na siasa wengine na wengine tupendelee. Let us not abuse it. They did a press conference, wakasema sasa ni wakati wa multiparty. Na walipata shida sana. Wakatupwa ndani. Kina Jaramogi pia wakawekwa house arrest. But the struggle still continued to the people who remained outside until 1991. Moi akasema, kwanza before 1991 Moi kusurrender, in 1990 Moi aliteua tume ilikuwa kuongozwa na Saitoti kuchukua maoni ya watu kama watu wanataka multipartyism. People were saying they want multipartyism, but the report that Saitoti was told to write ilisema kwamba watu wataki multipartyism. And that's what he presented. But Moi had seen a pressure. This pressure was also helped by the international things that were happening internationally, like the fall of the Berlin Wall. The fall of the Berlin Wall, and now he issued a Cold War in Asia, so we were exposed about the need for democracy in third world countries. Sasa kuna mahali tutaangalia Russia, tutaangalia wapi, America was dominant. And we appreciate people like Smith Armstrong, the ambassador then. He was really helpful. Ilikuwa kama unataka kushikwa tunakuambia kimbia kwa embassy, ukipenywa ingie pale, unajua sasa ni nchi nyingine huwezi shikwa. Kina Muito walikuwa wanajua kupenya huko sana. Na kina Gibson kama huko Korea. Kila mtu alikuwa ametoroka ameenda Harvard. Wakati mwingine Raila akatoka kidogo akahepa akaenda Sweden. Na Koigi pia wakaamua sasa kuhepa because hakuna vile namna utasurvive. So people fought. We got multipartyism because Moi called a Kano delegates conference. He knew very well that the pressure is too high. You need to allow multipartyism. So people said and ventilated, wakasema vile Kano ni sawa, hatutaki multiparty. Lakini when Moi stood, akasema kwamba tutoe hiyo kipengele ya tu People were surprised. And because Kanu had very good psychophants, they are clapped again about that pronouncement. But we had won a small battle. The bigger battle was there. Because tumepata tu nini? Multipartyism. But the infrastructure is still more at Kanu. That's the first time we attempted now to have an electoral body led by the late Justice Chesoni. Yeye ndiye alikuwa the first commission kutuongoza katika hiyo election. But by the time these detainees were coming out, and because when Katiba was released, he went to London for treatment. The intelligence team felt that if Ford remains Ford, Moi will go home. So it was infiltrated by the special branch. I remember as a delegate of then Ford Kenya, because remember Western, that time Wangare Maathai was pale na wamama pale kwa uwanja. You remember? Yeah, release political prisoners pale Uhuru Park. Now, because by that time Koigi was in, Miruki Karaoke was in, and other people. Yeah, during that period. And I remember Wangare Maathai coming to Ajib House. Ajib House was the Ford Kenya headquarters, because that's where Jaramogi had given the party an office. And when Ford was breaking, Katiba opened an office in Muthithi. Muthithi is in Westland. So people used to call Ford Asili Ford Muthithi, so which means it's Muthithi. Then there's Ford Ajib. Inamaanisha kwamba hiyo ni ile ya Jaramogi, eh? Then of course General Kiboya, who was Kibaki, had also started a party in December 1991 called DP, because he felt that he also need to have a stab at the presidency. So that division of the opposition made it possible for Moi to... Grey House. Hii ya Kamangara ilikuwa gani? Ilikuwa Ford Kenya. Ile Ford Asili. So that breaking of the opposition and Ford particularly, because I remember we were sent as I was sent as a youth representative for Wangare Maathai had started calling something called the Middle Ground Group. The Middle Ground Group was meant to reconcile, because Wangare Maathai was saying, and that's why the power of a woman. What Wangare Maathai was saying is that, remember, mimi na kesha na wamama hapa kwa uwanja, ndio some of our sons and brothers wakuwe released, wahusike pia kwa hii the first multi-party elections, na nyinyi hapa mnaniambia you are divided. If you are divided, how will I come out of hiyo uwanja na hawa mama na hao ndugu zenyu wakuwe released? So he formed what we call Middle Ground Group. So Middle Ground Group, when we went to Muthithi as a delegation to negotiate. I remember Martin Shikuku aliongea vibaya sana. Martin Shikuku told us, na wewe Wangare Maathai, how can you unite us if you cannot unite with your husband? Because remember, by that time they had separated with the husband. So, unaona mambo ya gender issues, how men take them, eh? So anakuandamine based on not the facts and the issues that made you separate, but he wants us to water down. You see, that's the day I cried. because I used to walk on foot from Muthithi to Mathare North on foot at 5 p.m. I've never cried for a party, but we saw what was happening, because ukichanganya kura tu, wacha hata ya Jaramogi, kura tu ya mtu kama Katiba got around 1.8, still 1.8. Moi got 2.4. Na uchanganye kura tu ya Katiba na uchanganye kura tu ya Jaramogi, Moi would have gone home in 1992. And what a country would yenye tungekuwa nayo with that combination about sasa hii ideas ya Kibaki na this other team. So I understand these people were crying for Jubilee because it's the latest. Sisi tulilia machozi kaisha kwa kichwa. Siku hizi ni observers. Because we felt that multipartyism, how can Moi lead us in the multipartyism dispensation? Hii katiba ambayo tumepata 2010 tungeipata kitambo. So, election went, watu wakaenda namna hiyo. Jaramogi became the official opposition leader because alikuwa na wabunge wengi. Now they were across the country. Kina Kiraitu Murungi were elected Imenti na Ford Kenya. Muite was elected in Kikuyu. Was it Kikuyu Kapete? It was Kikuyu by then. Kikuyu then, Ford Kenya. In course we had Rashid Mzee, Ford Kenya. So watu wakaendelea namna hiyo. Moi started systematically buying wabunge kwa defect. And the first by-election was in 1993, pale Bonchari. So some people told Patni kwamba mzee Jaramogi anahitaji pesa ya by-election Bonchari. So little did Jaramogi know that he was dealing with a golden bag suspect. So they were given 3 million kusaidia by-election Bonchari, because that mbunge mwenye alikuwa defect, he was from DP. Kibaki got very good votes in 1992 in Kisii. So in that arrangement, the by-election was done, but later Jaramogi was accused kwamba alipata pesa ya golden bag. Jaramogi akasema mimi niliona kijana alikuja kwangu. Mimi nikaangalia nikaona yeye kijana kwa sawa. Milioni 3. You see, what am I trying? What's the import of my statement? How the cartels and the corrupt permeate the political class and fund campaigns for them to get dividends. The same way muungano ya URP na muungano ya TNA was formed in whose house? Jimmy Wanjigi's house. And he was promised that atapewa ni tenda ya SGR, sindio? Ambaye alionea view sasa. Tunaelewana? And he came very bitter, so he had to join Baba, thinking Baba will win 2017, aende Israeli kupata nini? Tenders. Because ukizoea, umezoea. This guy, when Saitoti was the minister for internal affairs, all tenders za silaha yeye zilikuwa ni zake. That's why before the elections, when was it? When did Saitoti die? 2012. That's when, before Saitoti died, they had opened a campaign headquarter. Wanjigi had opened for them a campaign headquarter. Even kina anaitwa Chamwada. Chamwada was to be the communication officer, that he passed on. So he had to rush to Uhuru and Ruto wamwambie bwana hii any coalition you form must have an ICC equation. We have allowed ourselves, hii kitu tunasema sovereign power, the people we elect are being funded by tax, which is very serious. By the time tunaenda 1997, so tribalism imekita mizizi. What do? So every big party, every big community, tunaita big five, want to have a presidential candidate. Because we still beat about what happened in 92. So SDP has a party, ya Dr. Apollo Njonjo, Anyang' Nyong'o, na Justus Nyang'aya ambaye amechaguliwa sasa hivi kwa IBC commissioner. They were running a party called SDP by then. So tulikuwa tunaita the party of ideologues. Issue of social democracy. Wakasema they want to look for somebody who will be a presidential candidate. So they looked for Ngilo. Kibwana had even model constitutions of what was to be done. So tukapata kidogo kidogo, tukaambiwa kwamba political parties zinominate a member to ECK, so ionekane kwamba iko fair. Hizi issue kwamba ukitaka kufanya mkutano sijui mpaka uulize nani na nani, ikasemekana sasa tunaichange to notification, si ndio? So those were some of the minimum reforms that we went with in 1997 elections. But that was not enough. We had a lady called Abida Ali Aroni. What happened is that mchakato ukaanza. I remember, Muraya, were you there when we went to Nyayo Garden to give our views? Hapa. Oh, Nyayo Garden ni huko, okay. I'm just busy mekuwa fenced mpaka I'm losing the location. Yeah, so watu wakaenda Bomas, tena wakachambua hiyo maneno, tukakuwa na Bomas draft. So this new constitution has borrowed 90% what was in the Bomas draft. Then now it got adjusted. And that's why, ukikumbuka kwamba nyakati hizo committee of experts, it did not bother to come along mara mingi sana kutuongelesha, because already we had what we call the raw data of what we wanted. But Bomas, before Bomas iendelee, Moi disbanded Bomas, because we are going to the new 202 elections. Moi had already chosen our current president to lead everything. Raila akaambiwa aende Kasarani wafanye delegates wachague mgombea, lakini Raila akasema Kasarani imekuwa Kisirani. So he did not go there. So what he did, he came to Serena, cheated Nyachae, ati atamwachia kiti. Kuangalia pale chini anaona crowd ya kina Kibaki na Wamalwa na akajoin hiyo crowd, ashapigia simu yake the Kibira boys. Washafika pale, umesema let it be rainbow, Kibaki tosha. And that's what happened. So tumeendelea namna hiyo. It's a coalition that had its own teething problem, because there were promises made that Raila would be the prime minister, because tulikuwa tunasema kwamba after 100 days we need the new constitution, na hii constitution is the Bomas draft. So the Bomas draft, kuna prime minister who is powerful. So after elections, people who around Kibaki felt, how can we elect the president and delinquish power tena to an appointed prime minister who are more powerful than the president? It created a teething problem. So kukakuwa na coalition problems pale. So by the time tunasema kwamba we are reviving the Bomas draft, badala Bomas draft iletwe, Bomas draft ikapelekwa Kilifi na Attorney General, ikakuwa tena mutilated. Sasa Raila akakuja Kibera pale. Unajua Raila kama hapo na shida mingi sana, anaenda mahali inaitwa Katwikira Kibera. Nasema hiyo katiba imewekwa kisonono. So 2005 referendum tunajua vile ilienda. Sababu katiba imewekwa nini? Sonono. That's how things went. By the time tunaenda na tulitukanana sana, tukadharauliana sana 2005, and we had pent up anger that was not settled. So we carried that anger to 2007 election. Now we all saw what happened. So after the election, the post-election violence, and after the Serena talks, there were 4 agendas that people agreed on. First agenda was what? Zenye tulikuwa tunaongea Serena. What were the 4 consolidated agendas that we talked in Serena? Nyakati Kofi Annan alikuwa hapa. The problem with the Kenyans, they forget their history and they repeat the same mistakes, because what happens is, if you go to any country in the Western world, the first thing they teach you is about their history. Unfortunately, we have never documented our history. That's why we have Bonoko heroes. So the first agenda was what? Well, that was part of it. The first agenda was stop the war, ceasefire. No, the first agenda. Nani alisema ceasefire? Return all your troops to the barracks before I start talking to you. So wewe ambia watu wako waache vita. Wewe wacha ndio tuongee sasa Serena hapa. So the war stopped. And that shows how stupid we are. So we were fighting for some people. We had no issues to fight for. Because when we were told to stop the war, we stopped. Hello? The second agenda was the resettlement of the displaced. Hii mambo ya IDP issues. The government was to say what steps they are taking, including the international community, was to help in the resettlement, of which also that exercise became a big scam, where millionaires became IDPs and got land. The third agenda that was settled before the other agendas, and we got the biggest cabinet in the world by then, was what we call political settlement, ama the nusu mkate, sharing power. That was the third agenda. Na hiyo ilikuwa executed perfectly. That's how the political class are selfish. The fourth agenda, we coordinate the long-term issues. Nishika. Kwa hii long-term issues and institutional reforms, tulikuwa na vitu kadha wa kadha. One, we were to look at our institutions and we were to reform them. The national police, the electoral body, and fundamentally, we were to look at, does this constitution serve us? What are the systemic weaknesses of the constitution? And what sort of independent commissions should we also have? What we later called the Agenda 4 commissions. Who can tell me some of the one of the Agenda 4 commissions that we still have up to today? Am I talking to watu kutoka Timbuktu? Because if we don't know about this, we cannot appreciate this Katiba. We cannot jealously die for this Katiba. Some of the people who have said here died of no document but an idea that we need change. Wewe sahi, that idea has crystallized into a document, but you don't want to research and read. But all of us are in social media looking for nonsense. Na TikTok. download the Katiba. You see? Just download something called Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Report. Itakuambia hizi vitu zote. So some of the Agenda 4 commissions were to be permanent, some of them were just to serve their term and leave. One of them that was just to serve their term and leave was TJRC. Nishika? Shapeana report itoke. National Historical Land. Yeah, the National Land Commission. That window yenye tungeongea kuhusu hiyo mambo historical injustice about land, you know it's lapsing. So those are the things that in future we need to speak about. Because this was a negotiated document. Negotiated document, you don't get everything. Because there are a lot of interests. For us to get 47 counties, what happened in Naivasha? Anybody with idea? Because initially kulikuwa na utata sana nyakati kulikuwa na the other arrangement kupitia Bomas na Nakuru, we were to be governed from Kericho. So we let utata. So that's how we are having this 47 counties. So this constitution vile tunasema brothers and sisters, imepatikana kwa mambo mengi. Watu wamekufa, watu wamepoteza kazi. I remember there was a journalist called Gishere who was thrown out of a window 15 stairs up. Alianguka chini kama amevunjika. I remember my friend Patrick Mutai, his father, being picked from Nation, being tortured. If you read his book, you will cry tears. The late Mirugi here used to tell us what he had undergone. He lost a lot of time in jail. Angetengeneza mali. Unfortunately, akatoka akakuwa mbunge 2002, but by 2006 he passed on. So those are things that we cannot joke about. I've told you about the journey. Tumetembea tukafika hapa. What we do is, this is a clarion call. We read about Article 1. Now, I will invite you now to read Article 3, because Article 3 is inviting us what we need to do.